Tracking those types of calls can be difficult. That's because there aren't many platforms that can be used to make them anonymous and even present fake phone numbers. Our Jory Talley joins us in the studio with more on what goes into these types of investigations. Jory?
Columbus Police Chief Fred Shelton says it's not impossible to track down unknown callers, but it does take time. He says even though there are many ways to make these types of calls, there are also several techniques investigators can use to track them down.
When you hear a phone ring, you answer.
Hello.
Sometimes you might not know the person on the other end or recognize the number. And if you don't and the calls turn into harassment, police step in and work to track down the person behind that fake number.
Spoofing, where they disguise the number through an IP address using the internet to disguise and source. With that, we're also using technology to locate that IP address and to find out the provider, that's the internet service provider for that, and then we'll subpoena that company for the records and for the person that was using the internet at that time and using that system.
Shelton says investigators hope by doing that, it will lead them to the computer where the calls came from.
The same technology that they're using to disguise itself, the same technology that we're going to use to find them.
Startful Computers president Patrick Lindley says there are several platforms people can use to generate fake numbers that show up on people's phones.
Every device on the internet has to have an IP address in order to communicate on the internet. So there will be some attachment to some degree for every call that is made over the internet protocol.
Both Shelton and Lindley say although there are ways to track down the mysterious callers, it can be difficult. Lindley says the tricky part is tracking down if whether calls were made on public or private networks.
At somebody's house, at somebody's business, really a lot of it depends on the access that you have to the records and whether or not those people are using it from one location or whether they're faking their internet connection and spoofing their IP address.
Shelton says these calls could be ringing in from anywhere. And if you have harassing calls ringing in from unknown callers, he says call police and try to record the conversation so officers will have evidence to work with.
Keep a log of the time that they're called, the duration of the call, and that helps us in our investigation. So when we do our subpoena and we subpoena the address that the call is coming from, we can look at the time frame, the time, the date, and the places to see who was online at that time or who was using that system at that time.
Police will often call in state and federal agencies to help out in these types of cases.